McQuarrie Pen is a dreamer, she's a gardener, she's a reader, she's a nomad, loves driving across this country, spends a fortune on petrol, but as a stolen generation survivor, I'm a believer in the practice of kindness and empathy, and I believe that you can learn from many places, not one institution of learning, that if you keep your heart and your ears open and true, that learning is everywhere, and that's the world that I want to share in my poetry and encourage. I think initially I'd like to take it back to a metaphor that it's like two football teams. There's White Australia and there's Aboriginal Australia and different Australia. And if you're on the winning team, you feel pretty good about that. And you don't make much effort to meet other people on the other side because you're all filled up with adrenaline and, you know, winners are grinners. But if you do get the opportunity to meet team players on the other side, on the opposite team, you soon know that there's some good footballers on that other team, and there's some really nice people on that other team, and there's a chance of making good friendships with people on the other team. That's how I see Aboriginal people sitting within Australia. We're a vibrant culture. We're the longest cultural continuum in the world. We have a lot of knowledge and a lot to give, and rarely are we given that privilege. I think the stereotypes of the last 220 years about Aboriginal people prevent that, and I'm hoping with the inclusion of 5 of my poems on curriculum that we might start shifting those stereotypes and not be so separated by which team we belong to. That maybe when, you know, the oranges are being passed around, that there's a bit of friendship that starts. I'd like to see more Australians self-driven in an interest to learn more about Aboriginal Australia. I think a lot of onus is put on Aboriginal Australians to teach the wider community, and I think that's unfair. Belonging to the network of Aboriginal writers is an exciting thing. So much new literature is arriving. We're very well known with our films and our music. I'd like to see more Australians reading our books, coming to our talks. I think, again, there's a certain learning that people need to do in their own private time, and also a collective time. I feel sad that when I travel overseas, people from different countries know more about Aboriginal Australia than most Australians. That becomes evident in conversation. So it's out there, and you know, it's just encouraging. Aboriginal people, we're not just a monoculture. We enjoy meeting people from many different cultures, sitting down and learning story. I think story is really important, and if people really genuinely hear our story, they will start learning our truth. Our story can shift hearts. There's a magnificent handbook called the McQuarrie Pen Anthology of Aboriginal Literature that was co-edited by Anita Heiss and Peter Minter. So it starts with a letter from Bennelong around the time of first contact here in Sydney to pretty much the present day. So it includes Aboriginal writings, poetry, prose and drama. It's just a terrific resource. Some of our premier poets was Oodgeroo Noonuccal, Kevin Gilbert, Lionel Fogarty. I think they're really important to go back. So in the 70s and the 80s, this was the first Aboriginal poetry reaching the page and being published. Very important times. Sadly, what they were talking about then is still prevalent in Aboriginal poetry today, because for us a lot of the issues haven't changed. Deaths in custody still continue. The removal of children still continue. We have generational trauma. And that's the voices that are coming out and continuing. The writing of Aboriginal poetry on the page is not a victim's plea. It's a plea for justice. It's an invitation for friendship. It's a documentation of our daily lives and what we face from generation to generation. For me, most Aboriginal poetry is a wonderful manifesto, and now that it's published and accessible, again, it's an invitation for people to read and ponder and embrace our story. Aboriginal people belong to the land. The land doesn't belong to Aboriginal people, which is quite a different early point of view, which puts us on those two different teams, football teams. But it's not something to be feared, because in that is also the learning of right and wrong, how to treat your family kindly, the respect structures. And it's a beautiful land. I think most Australians proudly say, what a beautiful country. Learning more about the original story on the land might enhance that love. Already we're being forced together to stop fracking and mining in regional areas. So farmers are joining now in the prevention of that, standing side by side with Aboriginal people. And I think that's an important place. I'm sure the dialogue there is really interesting, diverse, sometimes difficult, but there's more than one identity standing for the beauty of this land now. And we hope more people come and stand beside us, because it is a beautiful land. We love our land. We want to share our land, and we want to keep it beautiful. Well, it's interesting, that one, because it's like the Australian government forced the politics into the poetry. I was living in the Northern Territory when the Northern Territory intervention arrived. It was the first time that I've been living on community, totally surrounded by family and kinship family, immersed in language, working hard. These were the people that had saved my life and given much quality to it. I was extremely happy. I didn't think I would ever move from there. I'd found my paradise. And then the intervention came with the stereotypes that Aboriginal people had a lesser intelligence, couldn't manage affairs, couldn't fix problems, things that I couldn't agree with because I saw it as another ploy for mining, which is being proven. So the intervention now has been going for 10 years. I see my family a lot sadder than they used to be. We used to be very happy. See people suffering a lot more from depression. So the politics is in the poetry now because many Aboriginal people ask me to give them a voice. It's important to remember that my son was also removed from me. So historically, people think the stolen generations is a thing of the past. My mother and me at my age, that's a thing of the past. But my son was also taken from me. That brings it back into more of a current context. And so many families are still losing their children. The departments have the power to go into nurseries, in maternity hospitals, and remove children without any consultation with families. So Inside My Mother is a big title. The poems that are included in this are mostly the poems I wrote after my mother died. And I'm very grateful to have known her for around 10 years. But when she passed away, as much as I was clinging on to that gratitude, I was also very aware that it was 34 years missing. And in that grief, my mind took another view across my life. And they're the poems that came. These are the poems how I remembered searching for family at certain places, crisscrossing across the country, trying to find out where I belonged. Inside My Mother, Inside Australia, there was a beautiful story waiting to be unfolding. There was a beautiful family waiting to be found. There was a beautiful caring culture to help me heal, to help me have the strength to welcome my son back and show him some healing ways. I think the title also is a compliment to our mothers. We all arrive into this world one way. We need to retain the respect for our mothers and our grandmothers. Even when it's difficult, you have to still love them and learn. Everything arrives by the mother.